Tom Brady retired. Hi, I'm Johnny Mack with your daily comedy news. That made our friends at All Pro Lines tweet, Brady can get to work on his Hall of Fame speech. I'd like to thank my family, coaches, fellow players, but most of all, I want to thank the Jets, Dolphins, and Bills. Frank Caliendo chimed in, man, this Tom Brady retirement really came out of nowhere. Nobody could have seen this coming. Sticking with football, Jimmy Fallon pointed out before the season, the Bengals odds were 150 to 1. To give you an idea, there are better odds of finding a rapid test at CVS. But this is the first Bengals Super Bowl appearance since the 80s. A lot has changed since then. Back then, inflation was high, there was tension with Russia, and our president was in his late 70s. And this is crazy. The Super Bowl is being played in L.A., and the Rams' home stadium is in L.A. That's right, even NFL players are working from home. We'll start with Gossip Corner from page 6. On Friday, John Mulaney shared a video of Pete Davidson sporting a chipped front tooth. Pete Davidson was meeting baby Malcolm Mulaney. It's like they wanted to tie all my daily Google searches into one big article. Couldn't you guys invite Dave Chappelle over? Mulaney wrote on the Instagram story, Uncle Pete. Pete Davidson sat on the couch with the 2-month-old in his lap. Pete said, yeah, babies are all head. You hear the parents laughing in the background. So what about the chipped tooth? Sources tell TMZ that it's not permanent. It's for a movie he's shooting. He had it for a project. It's fake. So is it makeup or what happened? Did he have a tooth removed and they put in a chipped tooth? Or do you get your tooth chipped by a professional dentist for a movie? How does that work? The final, probably, episode of Bob Saget's podcast, Here For You, was published this week. Dane Cook was Bob Saget's final interview. The podcast launched in 2020. Dane Cook told The Hollywood Reporter, upon receiving the final cut of this episode, it's been a mixture of melancholy and gratitude, also some excitement to share with his fans and mine. This is, except for the text to each other in the days leading up to his passing away, our last conversation. I have it forever and can share it. It's special to me on so many levels. Dane said Saget was one of his earliest supporters. I had a short film I produced and acted in around 1998. I told some people at the comedy clubs in LA that I got it into a local festival. Bob showed up at the festival and supported me. I couldn't believe he attended. I made it a point to tell him after the ceremony I would be there for him whenever he needed me. He contacted me to do something with his Scleroderma Research Foundation, and I was humbled and proud to help in that way. Performing at charity events. I respected Bob immensely. His career, work ethic, early stand-up and comedy specials on HBO informed me. Later, witnessing how he treated people, how he supported people. He was a rare person in that he had all his success, fame, and wealth, and yet he was accessible and kind. If I had to choose one defining moment, it was the night Robin Williams passed away. We had dinner that night. Bob shared laughs and tears, story after story. I was honored to be the friend in sharing the moment of grief and allowing each other to hurt and heal that night. We sat for hours reminiscing about all the things they did in stand-up and, of course, how they broke through. I was a kid again, and I realized I was also someone Bob cared for, and I cared for him. Now, I remember the day Robin Williams died. I had been let go by Sirius, and I wasn't on board anywhere else doing comedy, so it was one of those weird for me nights where a big comedian died, and it's my instinct to like, oh, you got to go do a tribute show. Like these days, you've seen me in the last month, right? Oh, here's a Bob Saget episode. Here's a Louis Anderson episode. And on that night, I didn't have anything to do, so I just went on with my life. A few hours before the news started to circulate about Robin's passing, there was a story involving NASCAR driver Tony Stewart. I'll read it here from us.motorsport.com. 20-year-old sprint car driver Kevin Ward Jr. killed when he was struck by the right rear tire of a sprint car driven by NASCAR star Tony Stewart. It's a tragedy almost beyond comprehension. His team released a brief statement. A tragic accident took place last night during a sprint car race in which Tony Stewart was participating. Tony was unhurt, but a fellow competitor lost his life. Our thoughts and prayers go out to his family and friends. At the time of that story developing, there were accusations that Stewart had swerved into Ward intentionally. From an ESPN article in 2018, the Wards alleged that Stewart recklessly handled his race car and maneuvered toward their 20-year-old son, who had gotten out of his car and approached Stewart's car under caution during the August 9, 2014 Empire Super Sprints race. A wrongful death lawsuit brought by Ward's parents for an undisclosed amount was settled. I'm just sharing that part of the story because in one of my many lives, I teach producers on the art of the news cycle, and I teach my college classes on the news cycle, and I always remember that day being like, hey, Tony Stewart killed a guy. Oh, Robin Williams passed away, and everyone completely forgot the Tony Stewart story ever happened. The Tony Stewart story was on its way to being massive news, before the passing of Robin Williams, which totally eclipsed it. And you see this sort of thing in the news cycle all the time. I mentioned on yesterday's podcast, Howard Hessman from WKRP in Cincinnati passed away on Saturday. News broke right before the football games on Sunday. Everybody got distracted. Everyone's looking the other way. Did Howard Hessman deserve better in his obit? Yeah. I was even guilty of it here. Betty White passed away on New Year's Eve. It was New Year's Eve. I had the weekend recorded. I had Monday recorded. I kind of undersold it. That happens Tuesday afternoon while I'm sitting in the studio already. Maybe I do a bonus episode. When Bob Saget passed away, I happened to be home, ran downstairs and did a bonus episode. That's how these things work. So I hurt my back shoveling. I live in the Northeast. We got all that snow on Saturday, was it? My back is killing me. I can barely stand up. So this morning, as you guys know, I go to the National Donuts chain and I get a large iced coffee with milk and caramel. And I went to pick it up. And believe me, it was painful to pick it up. Here it is here. Now, you can't see it, but I know you trust me. This cup I'm holding, the sticker clearly says large iced coffee. This is a medium. I know a medium when I see it. This is not a large. So if you want to help with this injustice and get me a proper large iced coffee, one way you could support the show is go to buymeacoffee.com/dailycomedynews. You can donate any amount you want. Recommended amount is $5. I would go to the National Donuts chain. I know it will say large iced coffee with caramel and milk, please. And I'm going to verify this time that they give me a proper cup. Just my back I was hurting way too much to stand there and argue. And I'm like, you got me today, National Donuts chain. Also, I promised Glenn I would return to trivia tonight. I've been sitting out trivia night because of the Omicron, but the numbers are down. Feeling a little safer. Feel like I could sit there with Glenn, wear a mask, answer some trivia questions. So if you want to donate, I'll buy Glenn 5/7 of a beer with your $5 donation at buymeacoffee.com/dailycomedynews. Let me plug their new Reddit while I'm at it. Reddit, subreddit actually. It's Daily Comedy News. Chime in on there. Hey, Offbeat.com had a great deep dive with Sean Patton. Sean Patton is getting a lot of news coverage this week. A New Orleans comedian back in New Orleans. Sean Patton told Offbeat, I've always been pretty open about wanting to do my first special in New Orleans, and I've had so many producers over the years pitch me ideas. One producer told me, we'll build you a stage on one of those side streets off Bourbon and have Bourbon Street be the background of your special. I mean, I almost think that's so terrible it's brilliant, but no, that's like if I'm trying to have a dog crap special. Another producer was like, what if you did a show on a float during Mardi Gras? Like the audience is on the float with you and you're just playing to them, but then Mardi Gras is happening in the background. I'm like, that's a fantastic Adult Swim special. If you want a comedian who's all about being in the chaos in the moment, that's awesome for them. But I'm a storyteller. I think it needs to be indoors. Let's start there. Producer after producer went by, and then 800-pound gorilla who's producing this special came in, and they're already awesome. They were like, do whatever you want, man. We trust you. This is your special. We just want to be part of it. And that was flattering beyond any amount of blushing I could muster. I chose Tips because it's the New Orleans venue. From Cinema Blend, Brad Williams is getting in on this whole controversy that Peter Dinklage started. If you missed it, Peter Dinklage, you know him from Game of Thrones. He said despite Disney being progressive with its casting of Snow White, the studio is still choosing to adapt a classic fairy tale that Dinklage sees as effing backwards with its depictions of dwarves. Brad Williams, if you're not familiar with his comedy, he is a little person. His first album is called Coming Up Short, and I'm on the Wikipedia right here. I didn't know this. Williams got to start by attending a Carlos Mencia live comedy show. While he was in the crowd, Mencia made jokes about dwarves. The people sitting close to Brad Williams were scared to laugh. Mencia noticed this, then noticed Williams and asked him to join him on stage. Williams cracked a few jokes and impressed Mencia. Mencia then asked Williams to try stand-up and be his opening act on the road. Williams has been Mencia's opening act ever since. That's pretty cool. So Brad Williams spoke to TMZ and said, they're touting the progressiveness. They're touting that they have a Latinx Snow White, which is great, but we're still doing the dwarf thing, you know? So he's right, but at the same time, I'm torn because it's like, yeah, it's mildly offensive, but at the same time, I kind of need the work. So I'm kind of hoping for acting gigs, you know? That's why I'm a stand-up comic, so I can get more work for myself and not have to worry about other people telling the story. I think there's ways to fix it. I think there's ways you could still do a progressive Snow White and not offend the dwarves, like make Snow White end up with one of the dwarves. How about that? I mean, she goes for a prince who made out with her while she was legally dead. That's kind of creepy, right? Brad added that all 7 dwarves are self-made diamond miners, have a nice house, and won't hesitate to protect Snow White, whereas the prince radiates, do you know who my father is? Energy? Eddie Izzard has a new special coming out, filmed at a top-secret comedy club near Convent Garden, where I was a street performer for 4 years, and it all comes back around. The trailer for the special finds Izzard backstage before the show. saying my whole theory of the universe is about circles, and anything that circles round tends to be good. The circle of life, circle of the universe, circle of the globe, the circle of orbits. Goes around, comes around. If you do good things, you can get benefits back to you. The new special will be on comedy dynamics. You can get that OTT on Amazon, Apple, YouTube, and the rest, February 15th. Have you seen Dana Gould's Hanging with Dr. Z? So this is a talk show hosted by Dr. Zayas from Planet of the Apes. It's a really good premise. It works really well. Dana Gould is really good as Dr. Z. It's funny. It's quirky. It's Adult Swim-ish. It's on YouTube. For season 2, he's got a lot of guests. Weird Al, Maria Bamford, Dave Foley, Hank Azaria, David Koechner, Ron Funches, Jeff Gordon, Penn Jillette, Bobcat Goldthwait, his buddy, Hannah Einbender, and Gary Anthony Williams. Hanging with Dr. Z, back on February 14th. My back hurts, so I'm leaving. That's your comedy news for today. Follow the show on Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, etc. Time for some Advil. Bye.